Hi everyone, looking forward to seeing you all back at the Art Centre. For anybody that doesn't know me, my name's Bryan and I look forward to meeting up with you all again. But in the meantime, we'll have some fun doing some videos. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to do, we're going to work on a little abstract, a nice wee easy one to start with. And mainly, I'm sort of working with acrylics. So today, I'm going to use this palette here. And sometimes I like to just have a wee spare palette here just so that I can do some mixing. I might not use it, but it's there anyway. So what I usually start off with, I always have titanium white. And I'll start with my main colours that I'm going to be using here. So I've got crimson red. These are sort of basic colours that you get in your set of paint. So I've tried to stick to that, and then if we need any extra colours, I'll mix them from the primary colours. So I've started here with crimson red. You might get something similar to that in a palette in your paint set. So I've got crimson red. My main blue that I'm going to be using is Serenium blue, which is a sort of a greeny blue, and the opposite to that is a kind of inky blue, which is ultramarine, and I'll use that for my darker tones. And also I've got some lemon here, which I might mix with some white, and this will give me my sort of aqua tones in the water. For the beach here, it's just very vague. This is just a sort of vague beach scene. But for the beach, I'm just going to use a little bit of Naples yellow. Now, if you don't have Naples yellow in your set, what you can do is you can mix white with yellow ochre, and it gives you the exact same tone. And if you like, I think when I first did this, I added a little bit of crimson, but you might not want to do that. I felt it was too strong, and then I went over it again and peeled it down. So you can please yourself. Now, I've got burnt umber out here as well. And the reason I've got that, I'm going to be mixing some purple with my crimson and my ultramarine. That gives you a nice deep purple. And then you can peel that down with a little bit of white. And then if you add a little bit of burnt umber into it, that gives you a nice mauve colour. So it gives you all your dark tones. So that's my palette, and I'll just stick to those colours and sort of make colours up from them. What I'll do is I'll introduce you to the brushes that I'm going to be using. Mostly for any picture that I work on, I just work with these 4 brushes here. So this one here, I'll not say the number it's on because all the brand names are different names, but it's it's almost like an inch wide, and it's quite a tough brush. It's good for oils and acrylics. And by the way, you can do this picture in acrylics or oils, or original oils, or water-based oils, whatever you like. So this is my tough brush. This is my big brush, which I'll be using for the big areas and the skies and everything. And the size of the canvas I'm going to work on is like a sort of a 16 by 20. But you can use something bigger, like this if you like. But I would suggest if you're going to use something bigger like that, you would want to use a bigger brush again. And there's no harm in using a big household brush, the ones you use do your skippings with. So you can do that. So that's the one I'm going to use for that. I've also got a round brush here, and this can vary from like, I've got another one to show you here. This can vary from like a size 6 to a size 10, 12, just your own preference. This is a smoother brush. You can use this for watercolours or oils or acrylics, but what I like to use, I like to have a brittly brush and I like to have a smooth brush. To apply it, it's so good to put it on, and it's quicker and much easier with the brittle brush. But to smooth it out, these smoothie brushes are nice for blending your colours back in. So it's good to have them. And as I say, you can use either the big one or the small one, whatever you're comfortable with. So that's what we've got there. And this is what I call my wee magic brush. This is like a wee 1/2 inch brush, and it's a wee smoothie. But it's not a softy one for watercolours, it's got a wee spring on it. That's for acrylic or oils. And as I say, you can use it for watercolours. But this is what I do all my drawings with. I mark out all my markers and all my lines, and I set everything out. It's like my pencil, so can't do without that wee brush. Use that for everything. And then again, probably not use this brush so much on this picture, although you can if you like. This is your detail brush if you wish to go back in and do detail. But since this is an abstract, we're not looking for exact detail in it. It's just an impression or an idea. You could take this picture and you could make it a bit more messy if you like, and just use the colour chart if you like. Just use the sort of colour theme and mix it and blend it your own way. So I'm going to get started, and I'm just going to show you how to go about starting this one, okay? So I'm going to get my wee magic brush here, and I'm just using water here. So I'm just going to dip this into water, and I'm just going to use the paler blue, and this is just for my markers, as I say, this is just like my pencil. So I'm just going to put this into my sections that I'm going to be using, and this is just my idea of starting a picture. Everybody's got different methods of doing it, but I've just got into a wee sort of way of doing this. So the picture from top to bottom there, if you go somewhere around about the middle and you do the same there, just give yourself a little mark there. And if I just go back there and just put my finger around about the same place, and that gives me an idea that the horizon line, if we want to call it that, or water borderline here is just above it a wee bit. So I'm just going to go about there. Now, that gives me an idea if I want to just do a wee dotted line, and this probably won't be straight because I'm standing at the side, but I'll sort this in a minute, and I'll show you how to make your horizon straight as well. Now, this is us looking into the beach rather than looking out at the sea. We're sort of looking inland. So I'm just going to get this started. So I'm not bothered about this area here now. I just want to concentrate on this first. So I'm going to just put that brush down now. In fact, actually, I could maybe leave a wee marker out for that as well. So if I just use this section here, which is this, and if I just go from top to bottom there, a little mark in the middle, this gives me just a wee bit more accuracy to where this final horizon line is going to go here. So I'm just going to sort of go down there a wee bit. So that's the line I'm going to be working on. So I can wash this out now. I don't need this anymore. Let's be finished with that. So we'll just get started this now, and we're just working with these two sort of panels here, which makes it a wee bit easier. We can forget all about that now. We don't need to think about that right now. So while I'm doing this, I'll just sort of mix my colours on the palette, and you can see what I'm doing. So this is my big brush, nice big sort of inch brush almost. And I'm going to start with white. And I'll just use this palette so that you can see it a bit better. I'm going to put some white on there along with selenium blue. And that's a nice sort of pale blue, just to get started. So, because I've left this wee marker there, that lets me see that my sky's going right down to there, just like this one here. And then I can work this over the top of the sky. So I can give myself a wee sort of pale blue line right across there. It doesn't need to be perfectly straight now because I'm going to be doing the sort of bushes there. So you can, lots of paint on this brush, lots of white, and just a little bit of the blue now, and just get a good coverage on the board with this, and just be as loose as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't very tight on here. So just kind of fill that area in quite light now, quite far up. And we don't need to take it right to the top. Quite often in skies, I would normally do white and then put my colours on and sort of use my board for mixing my colours. But if I'm going to be using dark colours, I don't need to put light under there because it would only just peel it down too much. So what I'm going to do is just clean the white off my brush now, as much of the white off as I can, dry it a little bit. I'm just using a soft tissue here, but you can use paper towels or kitchen roll or even toilet tissue, anything that you've got. Just to dry your brush. You don't want it being too wet. So I'm going to go in now, and I'm going to mix the two blues. I'm going to use the selenium blue, which is a greeny blue, and I always call this a kind of inky blue, so it's a right dark blue. And just mix these two colours together to start with, and just very gradually sort of start wisping it on there. It will pick up some of the light just to start with, but that's okay. Now, if you use your brush and go around in sort of circles like that, you're actually feeding the paint right into the canvas. And you'll get these wee kind of scrapey bits like that as well. But that's where your soft brush is good for smoothing in, or sometimes I end up just sticking to the one brush and I just kind of bring that over. And this is also still quite wet, so you can use your finger or a tissue or your soft brush, but I tend to just use my finger so that I can feel in control of what I'm doing here. And that gives me the light and the dark. And sometimes when you get that wee bit of light, it gives you a bit of distance as well. And you've got a gradation of dark going up. But as I say, it's an abstract, you don't have to stick to those rules like a normal painting, because it's going to get darker here and messed up with colour, and you're just going to gradually go darker up there, and it'll give you the idea of the darkness. Also, when you manage to put some darker tones around the edge of your picture, it frames your view quite nicely as well. So what I can do as well, I've got no white at all going on here now, I've just got selenium blue and white. I quite like to show that selenium though, because it's a nice wee greeny blue, and that gives me, if I keep showing that, that's going to give me a nice colour balance through the picture, because we're going to be using it down there. So I'm getting a wee bit darker now, and as your painting's drying out a little bit, when you go a wee bit darker, when you go on a wee bit darker and your painting's drying, it'll stay there more instead of blending in. So I'm just going to take that straight across there now, cover every bit of the canvas. And I'm still going round in wee circles. If you go round in wee circles to start with and then blend it where you want it to go, that gives good coverage on your canvas. And you get a nice wee graduation of the light coming through there as well. And if it's still wet, if you feel it's drying in a little bit, you can wet your brush or your finger and just smooth that in a wee bit. But as I say, it's an abstract, it doesn't have to be that perfect. And now, to make this darker here, I'm just going to keep the same mix and add a little bit of brown this time. I think I actually put a wee bit crimson in that one as well, just to make it even darker at the top. So this will look quite dark, and then I'll put a wee bit more blue and crimson on it, so it'll look almost kind of purpley, but it gives it a nice dark edge, and you can put that right across there. Okay, so I'm going to go for a little bit more crimson in my mix, and a bit of ultramarine. Ultramarine and crimson gives a nice dark purple, and as I say, the brown always makes it into a sort of mauve. Okay, so that's that wee bit done. You can smooth it out, you can do what you like with it. This is just an idea how to go about it, but you can do what you like with it. You can smooth it in, or just get a wee direction going that way, but as I say, you don't have to do that. Okay, so I'm going to clean this brush. In fact, I'm not going to clean the brush too much, because this colour here was like a kind of purple with brown through it. It was a sort of mauve, and it was quite nice actually, sitting on top of there. And then when this was still wet, it gave me a nice wee lilac tones. Can you see the nice wee soft lilac tones coming through there? That's how that came through, and yet it doesn't look like purple to look at it. So what I'll do is, actually, I'll clean my brush and just show you how to make that purple up again. So we'll maybe go for the lighter blue just to start with. I'll show you the different purples this gives. So if I use the selenium blue along with the crimson, so you're going to the extremes here, you're using the lightest blue and the sort of strongest red that you've got, and that gives you quite a nice purple as well. See the purple coming through now. And then I'll clean my brush and I'll show you how to do that with the ultramarine. It's just a bit stronger. So there's the ultramarine and the crimson. So that's almost like your darkest, strongest blue that's in your palette. It's the strongest one you get in your paint set too. So if you mix the two together, it's a bit stronger. See that? So that one's a wee bit weaker, it's a bit softer. This one's a bit stronger, but I always think it's better if you get it stronger, because you can weaken it down with white to give nice lilacs, or take that white off of there for a minute. Get more tissues. The bigger brushes hold more water. So if I put a little bit of brown, that's burnt umber, into that mix now, that's like a nice kind of mauve, that's lovely. Alright, so I want this to be darker for this picture, so I'm just going to get in darker now. So we went with the dark blue and the crimson, and that gives me a nice dark purple, and I'm just going to put a bit of brown in there to make it into a sort of mauve colour, and it's nice and rich. So make sure you've got plenty of it. So I'm just going to go right along here now on here, and I'm just sort of do a line like that, but while it's wet, if you take the side of your brush, and just hold your board, it's a bit wet now, but just hold your board and create a wee sort of bush with your brush, and then take the edge of your brush and do some up and down like that. I'm not even going to copy that, but you can make some of them either like wee flat lines like buildings in the distance, or wee sort of bushes, and it just gives you that effect. So just come straight across. That's how you need plenty of this. So just get a nice thick line there, plenty of paint. You're always better to mix up extra just in case. That's nice purple. This might be a wee bit stronger. And a little bit of down. So just going to go straight across. This line doesn't have to be straight now because I'm going to work in and out of this. I'll show you that in a minute. So you can do a couple of wee sort of, if you keep the brush on its side like that, you can do wee sort of almost like fir trees, and then just soften the bottom of them out like that. The thinner this line is, the more distant it looks as well, so you don't want to get too carried away making big objects. But if you want, you can do different wee things in the background like that. It's just an impression of things. Once you do that and you feel they're out there on their own a wee bit, just sort of soften them in a wee bit. Okay, so I'm not bothered about that line being straight right now. In fact, make it a wee bit thicker there. So, still using the big brush. And I'm now going to try and get as much colour out of this as I can. I'm going to peel it down now. And I'm going to use white just in case I've got a lot of colour going on. I'm going to use a little bit of white with a bit of my Naples yellow now. And I'm just going to go in there. Quite loose. This is quite wet, so I want this to blend in a minute. You just make sure your brush is clean at this point because it can change your colour into different colours. I'm going to give it another wee clean. Go through a lot of tissues because your brush holds a lot of water. And for some pictures, bigger pictures, that's good, but just to keep in control of it a little bit more, you just want to soak it up a bit. And if that was still wet, that blue, that would be going into green, but I think I'm okay there now. I think there's just these things on my brush. So if you feel that there are any other colours in your brush, use some white. I've actually got a wee bit of light source going on here as well. It's very faint if it's there. And I'm just going to put that, not in the middle, try and go off the middle a bit and sort of put it there. Right, if I put some of that light right across there at the top. So now what I can do is, both of these are still wet. I'm just going to put another little bit of white on there so that you can see them. So you can use your small brush, either I'd probably use a round brush if you want to blend that in, but I'll just end up using my fingers. So you can sort of powder that in like that, and it makes it look a wee bit more vague and a bit more distant. You can actually take your thumb and drag it down a little bit as well. Okay. And you get a wee bit of atmosphere going on, like these sort of misty things. Now it's drying out pretty quick. Sometimes it just depends if the room you're in is kind of warm or it dries out. It just depends on the atmosphere you're in as well. So I'm just going to soften that down a little bit. And see the lilacs coming through now, that's quite nice, see that? So that's what I mean about mixing your colours up on your palette. Sometimes it works out better than trying to just mix them on your palette and putting them in. If you were like trying to copy a picture and you're looking at colours and you're trying to mix these colours on your palette, sometimes it's better just to go straight in like this. Now I'll add a wee bit of warmth to that, not very much, but just a tiny little bit of the pink. That's the crimson with the Naples. That is quite strong crimson. You'll be very careful with crimson. Just tiny wee bits. But I'm just going to sort of flick wee bits on there like that, and instead of blending it right through, I'll just put wee tints on it, just to add a wee bit warmth. Nothing much on it at all, but it just adds a little bit of warmth. Okay, and I still got my light source there. I'd need to really wash this brush really good to make sure that I'm not dragging that pink through my picture. Okay, so this is just a clean brush now, and I'm just kind of, see there's something still in that. Just going to, if you pick up any other colours like that, just get some of your colour in white and just make sure you clean it up. As I say, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want my light source to show there. So I'm going to use another little bit of, I'm going to be quite generous with the white, like that, because you can always smooth that into your colours. So there you go, that's us done the top part of the picture already. And I'm going to clean my brush now, and we're going to start tackling this bit here. Okay. So I really want my brush to be clean here, so I'm just going to double check. I'll use clean water to make sure I'm not carrying anything through there. Right, so just as a base, we want to get a nice base on here, so I'm going to use white, but you probably wouldn't see white if I just put it straight on there. So I'm just going to add some lemon with that. This will be quite strong, I think. And it's not yellow, it is lemon. So I'm just going to throw some of that about throughout the picture to give it that wee balance. And when the picture's done, if you like, you can add a tiny wee bit of that through there as well, just to get a wee bit more balance on that colour. But this is your little aqua tones that's going to be going through the water. So I don't want to mix too much. I need to clean the yellow off my brush, because if I start mixing that with my Serenium now, I'll just get pure green. And I'm not looking for a strong green right now. It's okay, so we say aqua tones, but we're not really looking for a leafy green or anything like that. So you want to clean all the yellow off the brush and go back to white. And if you go back to white, that kind of kills out the yellow, so that it'll be safer. You're not going to be dragging the yellow through the blue. So a little bit of blue, or a generous amount of blue I could say. And it's mixed with white, so it'll be quite pale to start with. So this is my light source kind of down here. It's not very strong, but it's there. So I'm just going to sort of come in here with Serenium blues. And you can see that hitting onto some greens there as well, but that's okay. Just a little bit. We want some kind of aqua tones, sort of greeny tones coming through. So I've been quite light now. The good thing about these brushes being brittle as well, when they are a bit dry, they kind of fan out a bit, and it means that you're just getting wee scrapings of colours where you want them, so it's quite good. You know what I mean? So I just want to get wee bits of that, so tiny wee bit more of that mix, not awfully strong, and I just want to sort of, I always work with the edges with a stronger colour, so that when I'm coming into the middle, I've more or less got the colour I'm looking for. So I'm being quite thin with the colour now, but I'll build that up. This is just like a base. A bit more water. Right, so I'm just kind of smoothing that out. What I'm really doing right now is just making sure all the grains in my canvas is filled in. So you can just take your time and build this up at your own pace. You see the wee greens come through now, but I kind of want that there. I might even add more to that, but I'm going to go now with a bit more of the Serenium, and I'm going to build the Serenium up. You can see I'm still working from the edges first, because that gives me a wee practice run to see if it's what I'm looking for in the middle. Because this is a light source just off the centre here, because that's a light source there, I want some of my wee aquas to show through there. So lemon is what you're looking for, to show a wee bit of sort of transparency in the water. It shows up your wee aqua tones. So fill the edge of that board in so that you've got plenty of coverage on your board. It's quite nice if you've got a light colour underneath and then you put the dark on top, but you can still see the light under it. That's what you're wanting for your transparency. And that gives you a nice transparency in the water. Okay. So I'm just keeping the middle a wee bit lighter than out, and I'm just sort of filling in bits and out. You could even use a bigger brush for this. I mean, the bigger the brush, that's me coming past my middle line now. But that was just a guideline, but that got us our lines where we want them. So just to mention that we didn't really need that now. It was just at the beginning, just to get where we're going in the picture. But we're just going to build on this now, and I can work in the middle in a minute. But I want as much blue coming through that. Don't want to just stop there. But as I say, the bigger the brush you use for this, the better, and the quicker it is as well. You could even go bigger than this. I get into a wee habit there of using a bigger brush, and it just feels weird now going down to a smaller brush when you're doing a big picture like this. But I mean, this is the brush I used to always use. So this line doesn't have to be straight because it is like the shoreline, and it's just very, very loose. But some of this white still might be a wee bit wet, so that's good. And if it's dried in a wee bit, just wet your finger or your brush, a clean brush, and just let some of it blend in a little bit, like that. So that it's very, I use the back of my thumb quite a lot as well. It acts as a sort of soft palette knife, just to sort of smooth things in. Oh, that's okay. You end up with paint in every finger. Just blend that in a wee bit. Sometimes wee happy accidents are good. It gives you nice wee tones and shadows. Right, so I don't need to clean the brush from the Serenium colour, the pale one. I can add the ultramarine right on top now. And you can just start throwing this about everywhere, really. I come into the sides first. But if you keep showing the undertones, as I say, that's where you get the nice transparency, and I quite like that. Sometimes when you do the second picture, wee things happen that you just prefer, that you've probably learned for the first time you've done it, and that's good. So just go for it and see what happens. If there's something you like better, just leave it. I quite like that wee bit light coming through there. See, that creates a nice shadow there, and it shows off a nice wee transparency. And then I can scrape some of them back through, like that. Now what I'm going to do is, rather than leave the space for light, which you can do, I'm going to just fill it in, because I'm going to show you with the palette knife just how to, I'm not covering my yellow, but I'm going to show you with the palette knife just how to get these wee impressions of the wee sort of glittery highlights in the water. Just make sure before you go any further though that all your bare bitsy board is all filled in quite nicely. And if you see any yellowy bits, just try and leave them for light. But with acrylic you can always add, if you cover anything up, you can always add it back on. That's the beauty of acrylic. It dries quick and you can just work over the top. So what I might do, I might go in and out of these wee bits with a little bit of more lemon, just so that I get a few more aqua tones. The board's now got a wee sort of surface of paint all over now, so it's getting a wee bit easier to work on. It's like a good primer. It's getting a wee bit smoother. Your second layer of paint's always a bit nicer than the first. I'm just going to go in there. So the bits, the spaces that's left now, I'm going to clean my brush and just add some lemon. I don't want much blue left in my brush here, so I'm just going to make sure it's most of the blue's off it. I'll just check that there's still a bit of blue on it. The bigger the brush as well, the more colour sort of gets embedded into the bottom of the brush, so you've just to be careful. So I'm just going to be safe here, I'm going to use white so that I don't get too much yellow. And that just keeps it nice and pale. So I'm just going to sort of thinning out some of them a little bit. A wee bit more lemon now. Just build the lemon up, just don't do too much right away to start with. Kind of build on it. Remember, keep your light off the centre a wee bit. We're trying to sort of centre it, off-centre it I should say, to that side. As I say, it's an abstract, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect all the way up and down. It's just to create a wee bit of that light source. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a palette knife. Now you can use, if you've not got a palette knife, you can use a wee blunt plastic knife, or you can use a plastic card, anything. I'm going to show you two ways to do this wee sparkle here. You can use like a knife or a palette knife or a plastic card, but you can also use this big brush as well. Try and dry it a wee bit. Good way of drying it is making sure that you just sort of do that, and that's it, dry. So if you get it fairly dry like that and it's all nice and open, get some of your white just at the end like that, so it's just sitting on the bits that's spaced out like that. Now it might be a wee bit wet to do this yet, but I'll just show you wee bits of this. So I'll do it on a wee damp bit, so you can do this kind of thing. And you don't need to leave them all like that. You can take the end of your brush or your knife and just kind of score through them. And basically, that's all I did with that one. So you can do it like that, or you can take your palette knife. Now, I usually like to use a palette knife that's got a wee step on it so that you can flick it a wee bit like that. So I'm just going to use some white, not too thick. You can put big sheets of it like that on it, and then just go through it like that. You can use your knife that way as well. Do that sort of thing. And a little bit more there. Just different ways you can do it. But you don't have to, when you put a block on, you don't have to leave that block. You can split that block into as many different bits as you want. You can even go back through with your palette knife with your darker blue and cut into it as well. But you might get a bit where you want it to be quite extreme, the white on it. A bit lighter than the rest. And then use the end of the brush, the knife, like that. And then just so that it's not too blunt that, you can put these sparkles on the end, like that. But these will show up nice against the dark bits. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back in. I might just use my smaller brush now because I don't need as much dark blue. And I just want to go in and put some blocks of the blue, like that. You can do your palette knife for this as well, but you see how the two darks there bring up the nice blue there. And so it doesn't look too stripy, you can just bring a little bit in from the side. And then just, this is good for your detail, this brush, and just graduate little lines coming in like that so it doesn't look too blocky. And also, while you've got this going, this is like your wee finisher, this brush. When you've got this going, you can go in and out some of the light as well. And you can do it your way, the way you want to do it, so that these don't look too blocky. Okay. So nice big blocks of dark with the dark blue, and then just break into that. So you're turning your brush different ways. If you want a block, you'll use it that way. And if you want wee lines, you'll just turn it that way, like that. And every time that you put wee dark bits beside the light, it enhances the light more. So you could spend ages doing this if you want. It depends just how accurate you want it, but remember, it's an abstract picture, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to bring some of these in and out now. As I say, you could probably do this with your palette knife as well. It's just everybody's preference. Some people don't like working with a palette knife, and you don't have to. You could just use the brush with that. But every time you put dark on, it shows up the nice aqua tones underneath. And especially with the yellow, if you put, just going to rest the brush on there to get a nice block of that first, and then once it's on my palette, I can then play with that and move it around so that the aqua shows up underneath. I'm just going to space it out a bit now. And same there. So I've got a few wee bits of bare board shown there yet, so I could use that area to just block some of these blues around it. I always like to finish the dark at the side bit so that you're sort of looking into the view, and it gives it a nicer finish as well. The nice wee bits of light coming through there. And I'll just put some dark at the bottom there and a little bit there as well. Now I can work on this a wee bit more. Now on this when I had a wee bit dark, it was almost as if it was reflecting these, but it might and it might not, it just depends if they're far away. But it doesn't matter if you put a wee bit dark in there anyway. It gives a balance of that colour. So it's the same colours, kind of purpley tones, and you can just sort of drag them down. You can do this with your palette knife as well, get a wee clean palette knife, and you can just sort of do something like that, and it just sort of drags them down. And nothing too definite, we don't want detail because it's an abstract, we just want to get an impression. So, but that adds tone to bring up the lights better, so it enhances the light better as well. Okay, so I'm going to go in here now and just break up some of my lights. And it's almost like a little dot to dot with the dark. Just come through in there. It'll pick up light, so just keep adding the dark blue to it. Your aqua tones are already underneath, so you don't need to keep adding more to that. Now we want to keep this light over here, and I'll put a wee bit more light there just to emphasise that. So just going to put some of these over here so that I'm sort of pushing that light back a bit more. I'll now pick up a wee bit more aqua tones in here, just as it's coming nearer the light, which is quite nice. As I say, you can push it around whatever way you like. This is just an idea of how to go about it. And sometimes you can be a wee bit more loose with this, just using a big brush and not so detailed, you know. One of the other things you can do as well, still get a wee bit of white, maybe a bit of blue on my palette knife as well. So sometimes you can just, on a wee dark bit there, put a wee bit like that and drag it. It just gives it nice, not too much, just a little bit. And it's nice just lying over the dark blue. And see that picked up a wee bit of blue there, and that's what happens with the palette knife sometimes. Unlike the brush, the colour stays on the palette knife and it gives you nice tones. They don't blend, they just stay separate. So there you go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a wee bit more of this big brush, and this is the one that's a bit drier, and that will give me a few more wee sparkles there. So you can enhance the light a wee bit more where you think it's just a wee bit more. I'm going to put a bit more in there just to show this here. So there'll be areas where it's really quite bright. Just keep that, and that's your wee. It spaces out and it stays like that, so it just gives you the nice wee sparkles on the brush. I just watch it doesn't look too dotty, so you would just kind of even that out a little bit. As I say, if it goes too much, you just go back in with your dark. You can't go wrong with this. You really can't. A nice wee easy one. So I'm going to, while I've got white on there, I'm just going to go up here a wee bit more with the white. And while I've got quite a bit of that on, get a clean finger or a clean brush and just smooth it out a little bit more. You're almost merging then, so everything doesn't need to stay separate, and that gives it a wee sparkle at the end there as well. Because that colour's dried in now, so it gives it a nice wee finish up there. So I did mention earlier that we could maybe put a little bit of the lemon in there. I'm just going to use my smaller brush, which is round now. I've just picked up a bit of blue on it, I think. I used that because it was clean as well. I'll maybe use another one. So nice round brush. There's just a bit of white and a tiny bit of lemon, not too much at all. And just to keep a nice balance of these colours, you can put tiny bits through there. And just mix them in. And I'm just going to get a little bit more ultramarine up there. Sorry, this isn't ultramarine, this is Serenium Blue. I'm just going to put, my brush is quite dry, so I'm just going to wet it a little bit more. And because it's dry up there now, I can put a little bit more of that. But I've got a soft tissue here now, so I'm just going to sort of blend that in a bit. All I wanted is a little tint of the aqua there, so that it brings it back through. It gives it a nice wee balance up there. And of course there's the light source is coming from the sky, obviously, from there, so just make sure you've got that in. This wee brush is kind of spaced out, but that's okay. I'll just kind of blend it in. You can put the light source like that in, and then you can go round about it with some of your colour. See, this smaller brush is a bit better now. And I'll just put little bits of blue round about that, because that's it going up into the darker area, so it's pulling in those nice wee aqua tones now. And the white softens your colours that's there, so. But just to show the white up a little bit more, I'll put a bit more of this. This is the Serenium Blue. It's a nice we usually use this colour for sort of seaside colours and beaches and water, and it's a nice warm sort of aqua tone. So there you are. That's you. You can work away on it and tweak it as much as you like. But there you are. That's you. I hope you enjoyed that.